Slow living today is often dismissed as an aesthetic, linen dresses, a curated visual language of sourdough starters and having some chicken, speaking in a very soft voice and very, very slow, non-chaotic mornings that feel very far removed from our real life. Because when slow living is reduced to something that is image-based and consumable that we look at on a screen, it becomes very easy to mock, doesn't it? It's also easy to reject and also easy to misunderstand. It seems just unrealistic and completely detached from reality. It just seems like a pretend life by content creators. But what if I told you that slow living didn't begin as a trend and it did not emerge from social media? It began as resistance, as a memory, and as lived wisdom passed down quietly in families, in communities, in cultures, long before anyone gave it a name. Hi, my name is Mona. I'm a mom of 3, 4, and under, and I help mothers master their mindset through psychology, neuroscience, slow living with a biblical perspective, and I like to sprinkle a little bit of Nordic wisdom in there, and we're having so much fun while doing all that. I discovered slow living through trending on Instagram. I have been on Instagram for 15 years every single day, and 6 months ago, I just decided that it's enough. I don't want to live my life online. I don't want to compare myself to other people, and I'm so tired of seeing everyone's highlights reel. And I just thought, you know what? I'm gonna turn this off. I'm not gonna go back on, and I'm gonna live my own life. And it was also about time, because at that point, I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And having been online for so many years, that does something to our brain, doesn't it? Do you feel the same? Because I was so tired of scrolling and of not really being able to think. I felt like my brain was so foggy. So I decided that enough is enough. And right at that point, I had discovered what slow living was. So I had ordered a couple of books and I started my research on slow living. And at that point, I was only familiar with the Pinterest aesthetics and the slow living content creators online. I didn't really know what it was yet. Only these consumable short images or short reels. And what is that anyways, right? It's just a quick feeling and that's it. And we're supposed to replicate that in our real, messy, crazy, chaotic life. So I was like, you know what? Let me dig in here. Let me see what slow living actually is, where it comes from, and how we as normal people with real lives can use this wisdom. And boy, I found such beautiful things and lessons on slow living and where it comes from. And it also helped me look back to where I come from, which is from the Faroe Islands, between Scotland and Iceland. Tiny, tiny islands, the complete epitome of island living. That's where I'm from, that's where I grew up, and I just lived there until last year when me and my husband and 3 kids moved to America. It helped me look back to my roots and how slow living is actually happening there, and it has been happening there forever, but it just doesn't have the name slow living. So come join me in this video and let's look into this slow living trend that was actually never an actual trend. In the 1980s in Italy, there was a guy named Carlo Petrini. He founded the slow food movement in response to the opening of a McDonald's near the Spanish Steps in Rome. What Petrini protested was not just fast food in itself, but the deeper cultural shift that it represented. Eating without tasting, consuming without connection, and prioritizing speed and convenience over pleasure and community. From there, the slow philosophy expanded out to cities, to other countries, to work, to travel, to education, and then also to family life, and now eventually becoming to what we call today slow living. One of the people that helped articulate this shift for a global audience was Carl Honoré. He wrote the book in praise of slow, which was also the first book that I read about slowing down. He challenged what he famously called the cult of speed. And he argued that faster is not inherently better than slow. Around the same time when this book was published in 2004, there were scholars that came with the term slow living, and their names were Wendy Parkins and Jeffrey Craig. They published Slow Living, offering one of the first serious academic examinations of slow living as a cultural and philosophical response to globalization and acceleration. And yet, while these thinkers gave the movement a language or a name, they did not invent its essence. They named something that has actually existed for centuries. There are cultures that have been living slow without ever giving it a name for a very, very long time. And basically, the essence of slow living is honoring rhythm, honoring season, rest, and presence. And these things made life more sustainable. In Japan, slowness does not represent laziness. Rather, it is intention. It is woven into practices such as the tea ceremony and into concepts such as ikigai, which is a pretty famous concept nowadays because of the book Ikigai that has come out. And basically, ikigai is the idea of a life guided by meaning rather than urgency. In places like Okinawa in Japan, which is cited as a longevity hotspot, daily life has long revolved around community, gardening, shared meals, and a pace that allows people to remain socially and physically engaged well into old age without the chronic hurry that accompanies stress. In Scandinavia, slowness is embedded into their culture and into their language. And now the word hygge is so famous all around the world, and I'm so proud of that. Our second language is Danish, but our first is Faroese, but we still have that word hygge, and we say hune. And all the books that Mike Viking has written, who's a Danish guy, he wrote The Little Book of Hygge, it's called. And then lots of other books all around the Danish concept of hygge and intentional living. But we all know what that is, the quiet contentment found in togetherness, warmth, and presence. This is often expressed through long meals, candlelit evenings, and just unhurried conversation. In Sweden, they call it fika, the daily pause for coffee and connection. These concepts were never framed as productivity hacks. They were just understood for a necessity for a good life. There are other cultures. In Latin and Mediterranean cultures, slowness shows up in the structure of the day itself. The siesta, still practiced in a lot of Spain and Italy, also in Latin America, it acknowledges the need for the body to rest, especially in the heat of the afternoon. Meals are long, social, unhurried, followed by sobremesa, the lingering at the table long after the food has been eaten. This is where conversations and connections matters more than efficiency. Time in these cultures is something that you inhabit together, not something that you rush through alone. If you like what you're seeing so far, then I have a free workshop for you where we renew your body, mind, spirit, and calling with a little bit of tools, and it is linked below and it's free. Now, like I said, I grew up in the Faroe Islands, and Faroe Islands is often referred to the land of maybe. The weather here, the circumstances, and the sea usually decides how we are basically living our lives. They overrule human plans. And I can't tell you how many times my whole life I've been living there that we say, well, I guess we're gonna do that tomorrow because the weather doesn't allow it or something happens, and all right, we'll see tomorrow. Tomorrow it is. So it's very slow. And for my American husband who moved there in the beginning, he got a culture shock because in the beginning he thought, maybe our people, what is happening to people? Why aren't they working? What is happening? And I'm like, well, it's because it's 5 o'clock. People don't work after 5, or it's the weather is too bad, we can't work, or we don't have to go to school today because of the weather. And because of that, the slowness is not really aspirational there. It just is. it is also practical. I have to say though, that although I came from the Faroe Islands and it's very, I would say it's slow paced. They call it the last paradise on earth because it is unhurried and the nature is untouched as well. It's a beautiful place. I still personally and naturally was never a slow person. I did not understand the concept of slowing down. And growing up, my family always asked me, you need to slow down. And I was like, I don't have to slow down. I want to experience this. I want to travel. I want to do this. I have to run to my friend. It was always fast, fast, fast. And today, as an adult, I understand it so much better and the value of it. I don't really regret being a fast person. I mean, I think it's also very natural. It's just who I was. But I do appreciate how slow we were living inside of the home and also out in the culture. Even though I was very often impatient, I understand now, like sitting at the table, which was the rule. We don't leave the table. We're going to sit here and huna okon, which means hugga. We're going to sit here and have a drink and we're going to talk. As a child, I needed to play with my friends. That was difficult to understand. But today I just am so appreciative of that. So it wasn't until I became a mother until I really understood the concept of slow living. I'm not talking to you about the slow living that you may know, the aesthetic kind, but more about what I just told you about the cultures and what it actually means, about being intentional with our lives. It can look so different from your life to my life, right? Because you and I are not the same person. But I want to leave you with this. The questions that you can ask yourself in order to slow down a little bit instead of being so hurried and living a chaotic life. Because let's be honest, with kids that are loud and they usually hurry just naturally, right? They're impatient, they're loud, they have fun. But how can you slow down, not with linen dresses, not with hanging your linen outside or having chicken or baking sourdough? Like, geez, I don't have time for sourdough. I don't feel like I have right now, you know? So, and if you're in the same spot, then there are things that you can do to just slow your life down. And the number one thing is to become more intentional. Wherever you are every day, be there, right there where you are. Be in the present and observe. Observe your children. Try to feel that gratitude that comes by looking at your kids playing, being grateful to God for having these kids. Immediately, it helps to ground you. The other thing is being outside in nature. I think that's something that a lot of us are lacking, including myself. So this is also an advice to myself, where we need to step outside more for the fresh air, look at the trees, feel the grass, and you know what they say, like go outside and touch some grass. I can't agree more with that, actually. After I deleted Instagram 6 months ago, I feel so much more connected to God, to myself, to my children, to my husband. It's just magnificent because being online so much, I just can't tell you how it has changed my brain for the worse. And I really hope that I can rebuild that part that I feel is missing, truly. Because the more we live online and not in the present, the more we will miss. I think that's part of slowing down as well, without riding the train of slow living. The trend, you know, I don't think it was ever a trend. It just became this aesthetic trend online. But now that I'm not online anymore, I refuse to be a part of that group of slow living. But I want to invite you to the other part that actually has been within you this whole time, generationally. Your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents knew of this art of slow living, of intentional living, without having a name to it. I want to invite you more to that side of slow living and intentional living without making this into a trend, but inviting it into our lives to better our lives, not to compare, not to race with others, you know, other people that you see online or with picture perfect things, but in your life. What do you have right now that you think is beautiful? What do you have in your life right now that could be improved? Even making a place in your home more beautiful. Sitting down with your family, make it into a ritual. That's something that I think will really get you back to your roots of sitting down at the table. Light those candles that are made of beeswax, that are not poisonous. Sitting down with your family for hunalöta, which means hygge. One thing that you can do right now, start at home, is simply to have a hunalöta, which means in Faroese hygge, where you sit down and you have a cozy time. It's basically with a hot drink. It doesn't always have to be cookies or sweetness. It can be pieces of fruit, a piece of bread, but just that hot drink and sitting together and connecting. You can talk or not talk. You can read stories. My husband and I just started sitting down drawing these really intricate, detailed drawings that need to be colored. We're having so much fun, and the girls are drawing as well, and it's a really good time to connect with the family. But there are small things that you can start right now. I'm not going to tell you exactly things that I think is best for you, because this is your life and you know what works best for you. And that's why all these curated slow living trends don't really work for us, for the real life. So slowing down and being more intentional is something that I wish for you, because I know for a fact that we can all become more joyful by doing that. Now, if you are more interested in knowing about Nordic habits, I just made a video about that, and you can watch that right here. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you next time.